Hafa Day, everyone. This is Rlene live on KUAM's podcast network. This is episode 2 on April 8, 2019. I was invited up on March 29, 2019 to be the keynote speaker at the 6th annual CNMI Women's Summit. The theme of the summit was Lead Her Ship, implying that women have the authority, the power to be able to make their own decisions in their journeys. And of course, I'm known to be someone who speaks very frankly about things, and there isn't very much that I'm afraid to speak about. And so I welcomed the opportunity to do this in front of what I understood was about 202 women. It was a wonderful privilege to be asked to go up to Saipan because my mother was born and raised in Saipan, and therefore I am Mariana's descent. And so I took this very seriously and meditated about it, and actually was one of the few talks that I was a little anxious about, primarily because I was not raised in Saipan, and even though I travel there a lot to do research and I'm always welcomed by the families, I try to see my family as well while I'm there, I don't live there every single day. And so you have a disadvantage in not knowing the pulse of the community or the way things are developing and how people could receive you. A keynote speech is a speech that is meant to resonate. It's meant to address controversial issues. It's a speech that should stay with the community that is delivered to, and it may and may not be well received. I received a standing ovation at this summit. I knew that I was getting good reception from the crowd because they were participating in some of the humor that I shared in order to get some of the messages across, which is very motivating for a speaker. But as I was walking down off the stage, I was looking at my footing because I didn't want to fall off. The steps were not exactly close enough for me, and I was wearing heels, and I didn't want to topple over. And so I was looking at my footing, and then as I took the first or second step down, I looked up. And when I looked up, I saw the women in standing ovation. And I paused and I was surprised. Not that it was the first time I received that, but because I'd hit something. I felt like I hit a home run with them. And so episode 2 of my podcast is the keynote speech that I gave at that summit. And it might hit a chord with some of you, but please take into account that the message that I delivered on the 29th of March is about family violence. It is a very personal account of what happened to me in my second marriage. And it is my story, it was my journey, and it was my decision to end the marriage and to get out of what could have potentially been a violent situation. I do not condone violence against women. I do not condone any oppression against women or men. And I want to make that very clear. So here now is the summit keynote address delivered on March 29, 2019, before the 6th annual CNMI Women's Summit.
I'd like to introduce all of the adjective words that I mentioned earlier, the strong, awesome, vivacious, and all of that woman. This next speaker is all of that. Not only did I grow up with her in Guam, she was a classmate, but also, most importantly, she is related to many of our people in the Northern Marianas because she is one of us. She not only is a lady from Guam, but a lady from the Marianas. So please bear with me. I know that her background is in the booklet, but I need to have her hear all of the good things that she has done, not just for the Marianas, but for the world and for our local people. I'd like to introduce Rlene Santos Steffy. She received a presidential appointment at the Richard Flores Titano Micronesian Area Research Center as a research associate on August 10, 2007, with the title Ethnographer and Oral Historian. She is considered the leading oral history practitioner in Micronesia by academic, business, media, local, and federal government entities. Over the past 41 years, she has developed into mass communication specialist incorporating a unique combination of professional, practical, and academic casework and experience in the areas of advertising, electronic media, public relations, cyber journalism, broadcast journalism, and photojournalism. So she's all that ism. She has flourished as an investigative reporter, public relations manager, marketing and advertising manager, a videographer, although she brought her own personal videographer with her today, newspaper columnist, and managing director, a documentary film producer, and author of Tomorrow children's books and Wildlife of the Mariana Islands Beginners Guild booklets. And if you haven't seen her going around the island and over to Maniagaha and all over taking photos of the birds of the Marianas, then you haven't seen her yet. That's one of her sidekicks, her hobbies. As a proficient speaker in Chamorro and English languages, a skill of utmost importance in producing and documenting bilingual projects in mass media, Steffy has produced 10 locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally acclaimed Guam history video documentaries with grants from the Guam Historic Resource Division, the National Park Service, the Guam Legislature, and private funds. And I couldn't help but laugh because the private funds includes her husband's pocketbook. These historical contexts, video documentaries on the history of Guam and the peopling of the Mariana Islands with research into its historic sites, its people, their culture, and language. Steffy is the first historian to produce the history of Guam from 1521 through 1898 in 36 half-hour video episodes. She reminds me of Netflix and Hulu. No, Esther? For television of the peopling of the Marianas. It's entitled E Tinautau Marianas, and it premiered in Guam on March 2014 and ran through September 2018 on KUAM TV8. It was also aired here in Saipan. It is now showing for the second airtime on the legislative channels GTA 21 and Docomo 117 on Guam, in case you happen to go to Guam. Tinautau Marianas Season 4 is focused on archaeology in Micronesia, began airing on January 8, 2018 on KUAM television and the Guam Legislature channels to bring attention to the history of archaeology in Micronesia. I'm almost there. On March 11, 2019, Steffy ended her 25 years as a newspaper columnist, which began with the Pacific Sunday News in 1994. She also wrote for the Guam Variety and then Mariana's Variety Guam edition and the Guam Daily Post. She was also managing director of the Guam Variety and contributing writer for GU, or Guam Magazine. In 1997, after immersing herself as a social, cultural, and political commentator, as a newspaper columnist, she began a talk show host on K57 radio while continuing to write her Pacific Sunday News column. In 2000, Steffy began the managing editor for the Guam Variety newspaper. In 2001, she went back to K57 radio and began hosting a 2-hour weekly show. And soon after, she began K57 radio's first investigative reporter. With a strong desire to pursue her interest in oral history collection and documentation on a full-time basis, she pulled back her talk show host hours in 2003, but maintained her duties as investigative reporter and began writing for the Guam Sunday Post. Her interviews and photographs have been published in local, regional, national, and international magazines and news organizations and presented at international conferences for the Japan Oral History Association, Australia Oral History Association, and the International Leprosy Awareness Global Project on the History of Leprosy website, and the International Leprosy Awareness Conference and Pacific Festival of the Arts. They have also been published in technical reports for the International Archaeological Research Institute, Inc., Cardinal, Micronesian Archaeological Research Services, and MARC. She and her husband, Robert Steffy Sr., have published 2 editions of the 1908 Chamorro Diglot Bible and 10 local, national, and international acclaimed Guam history video documentaries with grants. And now I can breathe because that's the end of it. Please help me welcome this very well, what do I want to say? Awesome again. Awesome lady who did it all. And she is one of us. So let's give her a warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My sister from another mother, Miss Rlene Santos Steffy.
Thank you.
I ran out of breath.
Oh, thank you. We're going to take a break now, and we will be right back. Thank you very much. I don't blame you for talking to each other while Francis was doing that. I got tired of listening to it myself. I actually cringe when I have to describe what I've done because I've never done anything for recognition. I've never done anything for accolades. I've never done anything for money. I've done everything so that I could learn. And if I can impart anything to you before you leave today, I beg you to open your minds. I beg you to look for yourself. And I beg you to stop doing what other people tell you to do. Louder. If you consider yourself a powerful woman, please stand up and leave this room. I'll go with you. Your First Lady and everybody before me, including your priest, recognizes the power of women. But nobody talked about submission. Yet everything that has occurred here was led by submission. And everything that was led here and done here today, to this point, has been an example of headship. And your priest talked about Mary. which is odd because I am doing this talk with limited visibility and a lot of blinders. I am Mariana's descent. My mom was born and raised here. Her first cousins grew up here. They moved from Guam to Micronesia in 1896 and flourished, not because they could, but because they wanted to. And if you do anything from this moment forward, do it because you want to, not because you have to. Part of the reason that my bio is so long is I've been very selfish. I've done what I wanted to do, and I've been empowered to do it. But I've also been motivated to do it, encouraged to do it, prodded to do it, convinced to do it, begged to do it. How could I say no? With that much force behind me, how could I say no? If God gives us qualities and we don't use those qualities, that's a sin. If you don't have the gift, but you have the opportunity to develop that gift, to enforce something that you should do, that's a sin. You're not applying yourself enough. Don't blame the lady next to you for not doing it. It's your fault you asked her, what should I do? Well, guess what? She's not going to tell you. Don't even ask her, does this dress make me look fat? Why do you care what she thinks? If you like the dress and it makes you look fat because you are, embrace yourself. If you don't like being fat, I've been there, done that. When I get pregnant, ladies, I have to lie down. Funny it starts there, right? I can't get up. If I get pregnant, I gotta lie down to keep the baby. I've lost 4 by getting up. It is a debilitating thing because when you get pregnant, you see the future of that child. You know what you want that child to be. Everything telegraphs for you. The minute the doctor says, oh, you're pregnant, like it's an apology. Well, gosh. I think it's a result of something I did. I think I wanted this. Can't blame somebody else, right? There's a word in Chamorro for that. Hafane ng babay. Hafane. So if you put yourself in that situation, there's a consequence, right? Don't blame somebody else. You know it, they know it, we all know it. We all know what's right, we all know what's wrong, we all heard it, right? My mom is a World War II survivor. You know how she taught me sexuality? Don't ever lower your flag. Mom, I'm not in the military. She never explained that one to me. So I don't know how many times I lowered my flag, but my mom didn't know. So I'm demonstrating these things, ladies, because you have control of everything in your life. If you married a bloke, congratulate yourself. You made the choice. Don't blame mom. And don't blame the friend that you were jealous about because he was dating him and you went after him. It's what you get for going after your girlfriend's husband or boyfriend. You made your bed. Mom always said that too. Make your bed, you live in it. Carry the cross. What cross? I don't have a cross. I'm not a priest. We use these cliches, but we don't tell each other what they really mean. I hate them. I also hate acronyms. I don't know what that is. Every time someone says GPA to me, I say, what does that mean? Because for different people, GPA means something else. I'm not picking on these ladies, but I have a habit when I'm going to talk to go around and say hello to everybody. If you came late, I missed you. So hello. But my point in going up to them is to get to know who they are, why they're here. I know why I'm here, but why are you here? Are you here because you got no place else to go today? Well, if you are, I'm going to make it worth your time. If I impart anything to you today, it's that you're wasting your time if you're here because you have nothing else to do. I have 1,000,001 things to do. I didn't sleep for 26 hours before I came here. Before I boarded the plane, I was so tired I didn't care what seat they gave me. I hate being by the window. That's what I got. That's what I get for not paying attention. I didn't sleep because I had to finish everything I had to do to be up here today because I love coming up here. I kept Vanessa up till 3 o'clock in the morning because I had to edit Cecilia Caipat Salapeo's interview for my first podcast on April 1st. I had to get it into KOM before I boarded the plane. I had only enough time to go shower, and my husband says to me, "You're late." You know how many times I run to the gate with the door almost shut? They know me by name, Mrs. Steffy. It's because I have something better to do than board a plane or whatever. But I do make it a point to never do something I don't want to do. My father taught me a very empowering word. It's only 2 letters. And my granddaughter, Zoe, knows it well. No. That is the most empowering word a woman can learn. No. If you don't want to do something, say no. Don't say yes and regret it. Because if you live in regret, then you're always trying to catch that sailboat that you wish you could be on. You know how painful it is to try to catch up with your past? Think about that. How do you catch up with your past? It's gone. It's his story, not her story. Your story has been written in history. Play on words, right? But his story wouldn't have happened if her story wasn't there. Why are you here today? Who is your mother? Did your mama raise you good? Only you can say. My mama raised me well. I'm still trying to figure out what flag she's talking about. She's 86 years old. I would have brought her here today, but she said, she's tired. She's 86, she's now my baby. And that's the most important thing that I think I can impart to you too. All those titles that Francis talked about and all the accomplishments that I've had in my life, the most important role for me is being Bob Steffy's wife. The second most important role is being his children's mother. And everything else comes from that. Subjection is a good word for me because I understand what headship means. My husband is not a domineering macho man. He's actually a feminist. My father was a feminist. And these are titles, they behave these way. I didn't even know what they meant. I'm not an activist. I'm not a feminist. I'm not a hippie. I don't go around without a bra. I sleep with one. It's like gravity takes a toll after a while. Why do I want to encourage it? So my father told me when I was younger, you can do anything you want to do. To me, that translated into everything I can do. So when I became a teenager, he said to me, "Rlene, you can't do everything." Oh, really? Is that what you've been telling me? I was asked to run for a beauty contest. I was sent to John Robert Powers. You know why? I grew up with boys. So at some point, they wanted to feminize me. They wanted me to wear dresses. This is my muumuu, folks. I'm very comfortable in pants, not because I'm trying to be a man. It's because the wind always blows the skirt up. And when I'm carrying something, I don't want to have to go like this and keep trying to hold and balance things. It makes things easy. Thank God somebody invented pants. Probably was a woman. But in this Hership Leadership Conference, since you're all powerful women, you're all leaders of your own destiny, you're all mothers who influence your children, I want to tell you about stories of women that have really touched my heart. One of the reasons I'm here today is because a man in this crowd appreciates oral history. And you, the community here, also appreciate oral history, much more than Guam. I congratulate you for that. I became an oral historian not because I wanted to collect stories, but because they needed the collection of oral histories to maintain the histories, herstories, if you will. Chamorro women will do everything they can, sleep with everyone who will, support their children. Nothing is more important to a Chamorro woman than her child. We kill for them. Why do we kill them? Why do we send them off to battle like it's a really important thing to do? I nurture my son. My son, Spencer, was 9 pounds, 13 ounces at birth. His head circumference and shoulder and hips were the same. 2.5 hours in labor, the doctor says to my husband, he's not going to come out. Bob said, what are we going to do? Chris Sparrow said, we have to go C-section. Bob said, what are you waiting for? Move. The dilemma. I'm a Jehovah's Witness. I don't accept blood. My husband said, wait a minute. What happens if there's a problem in C-sec? Chris said, you need to make a call. You know, imagine how tough that is for a husband. My daughter Tara was in the very same situation on her first birth. She said to me, Mom, I need you to be my agent because Paul will always go with me. I said, you're asking me to choose between my baby and yours? Dilemma. That doctor would have been happy cutting that baby out as soon as he could. He could go home and rest. I took Tara to as far as she could, and when she said, Mom! I said, now, move. Boom. I wasn't even at the hospital. Madison was born. When you're put in a predicament to make a decision, life-saving or whatever it is, what to cook for dinner, do it with your best heart. I was speaking to somebody yesterday who said, I do my 110%. I said, there's no such thing. You can only do your best. You can't do 100%. How do you rate that? How do you rate 50%? You do your best. Whatever that best is the best. Whatever your capabilities are, that's all you can do. But do it. Don't say no in that sense. I taught you how to say no, but don't say no there. Say yes to every opportunity you get. Because if you don't, you fail. Don't be afraid of failure. It's okay to fail. I'm imperfect. I think I'm perfect. That's imperfection. We're going to take a break now, and we will be right back. So going back to the submission thing, I want to talk to you about a woman you all know. You've never met her, but you all know her. Her name is Eve. You know her? Know her? Yes. You at least have heard of her, right? She was not a good example of submission. Her husband told her, don't even touch the fruit. God commanded him, don't eat of the fruit in the middle of the garden. He told that woman, because he loved her so much, don't even touch it. Did she listen to him? No. How do you know that? How do you know she didn't listen to him? Who told you that? His story is she offered him the fruit after she ate it. What was the command? If you eat from it, you will. What? Finish the sentence. If you eat from it, you will. Louder. Louder. Did she? She didn't die? Eve's still around? Where is she? You're Eve? Eve died. Are you dying? Who here is going to survive? We all died because she died. We've inherited her imperfection. But why did Adam eat? He did not exercise proper headship. She wasn't in submission. All that means, folks, is that if you're married to someone and you want to do something, which I do all the time, I ask my husband, what do you think about this? We discuss it, headship, then he decides, and I submit. If I choose a different course and I crash that canoe because I wanted to do it my way, well, then I'm with Frank Sinatra, aren't I? Not Bob Steffy. So if you are Mrs. Somebody or other, you owe it to yourself to bring him into whatever you're doing. Because if he supports it, you will be more successful. And if you're successful, then your family is successful. I have daughters who do nothing on their own either, because I hope I've set a good example. They discuss things. They even cook together. My husband doesn't do that. And I'm a terrible cook. I don't even think about food. That's not the kind of thing I look forward to. Education, learning, experience, boy, I'm right there. I jump, grab all my bags, and I'm gone. But cooking, I told Bob, wasn't born in the kitchen. Not my favorite room. We renovated the house. He goes, Rlene, that is the most expensive room in the house. I said, you could leave the slab. I'm fine. I don't have to cook. And he goes, we can't leave. Then you have a dilemma. If you want that kitchen finished, it's going to cost you 20 grand. If it doesn't, that's your decision. I let him decide. The kitchen is nice. If you want to cook, come when you're in Guam. It's there for you. I just like to clean. So I don't have a problem. But the point that I'm getting at is, here's another woman you might know, Mary. I think your priest touched on that. Do you know that when Mary and Joseph were engaged to be married, and back then, being promised to someone is the same as being married, because you've committed yourself, right? You just haven't gone through the ceremony. So Mary gets pregnant. Can you imagine Joseph? How would you feel if the woman you just asked to marry all of a sudden got pregnant? You're going to want to, you're going to go, not me. How did you get pregnant? We know how that happens. But in this case, this was a Holy Spirit pregnation. This was done by God. So he spoke to Joseph in a dream, and Joseph consulted his wife, Mary. And from that, they appreciated what happened. So he did not divorce her, but he asked for a certificate of divorce. Bet you didn't know that. That's in his story. But her story is admirable, because she was a better wife than Eve. So what kind of wife are you? Do you follow Mary's example of proper submission to your head? When that man said, would you marry me? You said, yes. Well, that's a commitment. Once you say yes, you can't go back and say, well, I didn't know what he was like. Here's another story that I've heard, and this is true. This one man said, or woman, I'm sorry. She said, she's complaining about her husband. He never opens the door for me. He never this and he never that. And she said this to somebody, and he said to her, change. Change yourself, because that's the only power you have. You cannot change somebody else. But if you want your husband to love you, cherish you, protect you, guide you, provide for you, flip the mirror, ladies. When did you stop loving him? When did he stop mattering? When did his voice start becoming like that nail going down the chalkboard? Something happened. Change your attitude. Make your marriage work. Be a good wife. Be a wonderful, loving mother. Because if you do that at home, you will be the best at everything you do outside. It starts at home. You are your first teacher, children's teacher. You're actually your children's first example. If you lie in front of them, if you lie to them, then you teach them how to lie. If you're not a good wife, you teach your daughters to not be a good wife. My marriage to my first daughter's father ended in a divorce when she was 3 years old. Because he suffered from PTSD. I knew nothing about PTSD. I was a probation officer for the court. Every time that man got mad at me, he took out a gun. Every time he got mad at me, he cleaned the gun. That is intimidation. I knew it, he knew it. What am I going to do about it? I wanted my marriage to work, but I didn't want to end up dead. So I started to plan my departure. Dilemma. I knew he's not going to let me have my kid. He's not going to let me walk out that door easy. So what do? You may do something different from me, but I'll tell you what I did. I left. I kept a clean house. I fed him. I did everything I was supposed to do. I wanted my marriage to work. But I knew that's not the kind of wife I wanted to be, and that's not a marriage I wanted to save. So I packed my bags, and he got up and came into the room, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm sorry, but this is not working. I'm going to leave." First thing out of his mouth, "You're not taking the baby." I know that. Second thing out of his mouth, "I cannot repeat here." That's fine too. I continued. He was upset. He takes my bags, throws them out. I go out there, embarrassed, hurt, crushed. My whole world was going to fall apart. Did I even think about what would happen tomorrow? No. I could only live for that moment. I knew I wasn't going to take my daughter out. That would be a conflict. I could end up dead. He had guns. So I take my clothes. My mom, for some reason, comes to the window. She's living in the 2-story, and she said, "Hafadena dosna. Hafabilan mi medyo gano papa. Esta las 11." You know what I said to her? "Mom, for the first time in your life, please don't scold me. Pick up the phone and call the cops and tell them that there's a .357 Magnum aimed at my forehead." My ex-husband's standing at the door, flips me off, shuts the door. I get in my car and I drive away. Where am I going? I have no clue. I drive until I end up at my girlfriend's house, knocked on her door at midnight. "I need to sleep on your couch. I'll tell you what happened tomorrow." 2 weeks later, I go back to the house. We're sitting at the bed with my husband and my daughter, and I'm explaining to her, "Mommy and Daddy can't live together anymore, but doesn't mean we don't love you. Who do you want to live with?" Empowerment at 3 years old. She says, "I'm going to stay with Daddy because you have a lot of friends." Okay? When you decide to come with mommy, you call me. That call came 6 months later. I dropped everything. And I went to pick her up. And I said to her, why do you want to go with mommy now? She says, Daddy has a girlfriend. He was fine. She stayed with him until he was fine. And then she charted her own journey. She started writing her story her way. That, ladies, is empowerment. That's what you need to teach your children. Let them be their own navigators, but guide them. Don't let them get a canoe not knowing where to go or how to steer it, because we all know where that's going to go. They're going to crash. You don't want them to do that. Guide them. I will give you one last experience, and then I will hand it off. I never wanted to get married again. I was married twice before. I knew growing up I was going to get married. I didn't necessarily think I was going to have children, but I knew I was going to get married. By the time I met Bob Steffy, it took me 3 years to agree because I didn't want to go down that same path. So what convinced me to marry this man? Why is he any different from other men? The difference was I changed. It wasn't always about them. I changed. I learned what a woman in God's eyes should be like. And that there is no more motivating talk than the Creator's definition of what you should be as a woman. You can chart your own journey, you can modify anything he wrote, but the very basic part of being a woman is that you are in subjection to somebody, whether it's your husband, your governor, your country, this consul. We're all in subjection. So if you see headship in a very different light, you will be able to chart a course and a journey that will be successful for you the way you want to write it. And I pray and hope that all of you from this day forward will start writing your own journal, your own way, in a successful fashion. It has been a privilege to be asked to come here today, but the greatest privilege that I've received is not to be brought up here. The greatest privilege has been to be embraced as a daughter of the Marianas. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to take a break now, and we will be right back. In summary, I would like to say that although the word submission may be a controversial term for some people, it isn't in the context of spirituality. The Apostle Paul said that women should be in subjection to their husbands in the Lord, in all things in the Lord. And that is all that I am advocating here. I could never tell a woman to leave her husband for any reason. And that's because I'm not the one walking in her shoes. Likewise, I have made decisions in my life based on what was good for me at the time. My situation was pretty drastic. In my first marriage, my husband committed adultery and I lost the baby. And therefore, while my second marriage ended in divorce as well, it was greater for me than just my life being at stake. There was one thing that I wanted to impress upon my daughter. At the age of 3, although she might have been too young to understand, I wanted my daughter to grow up in a healthy environment, to understand that marriage should be a union of give and take and love, respect, and honor. And I did not want my daughter to think that a marriage should include family violence. And therefore, it was my reason for terminating the marriage, in addition to the fact that I did not want to end up dead. Now, whether I would have or not is not the point. The point really is that I would have been the model for my daughter, and I would have set the example for her that if I would have tolerated a marriage filled with family violence, she would have grown up in that, and she would have thought that that would have been normal. And I did not want that to be my daughter's normal. I knew that one day she would address this issue, and she did. At the end of 2017 or early in 2018, my daughter Tara asked me why I left her daddy. And so I told her it was because I didn't want her to think that family violence was a natural part of marriage. And so therefore, folks, if you're listening here, I want you to understand that in no way do I condone violence against anyone, whether it's against a woman or a man, between sisters, between brother and sisters, between husband and wife, or between friends. Violence is violence. I hate oppression, and I just want to make that very clear. So thank you for listening. This is Rlene Live.